This is your before and after story. Instead of imagining a rewarding career in medical imaging, Southeastern College can actually take you there. Prepare for a career in ultrasound, radiology, and X-ray technology with hands-on specialized training, simulations, and real-life experience with the latest imaging technology. You'll be ready to play a vital role on any healthcare team. Transform your life by helping others. Southeastern College. Your future is bright. Visit scc.edu to get started.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, June the 27th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams is producing the Come On With It edition of the show. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So, beginning this weekend, one of the biggest softball tournaments in the province is the 43rd annual Constable William Moss Memorial Fast Pitch Tournament. It takes place from June 29th to the 5th of July. Various fields around town. There's 30-plus teams, so good luck to all participating. And for folks who might not know who Constable William Moss is, here we go. He was tragically killed March the 12th, 1959, during the International Woodworkers of America strike at Badger. He eventually became known as the Badger Riot. He was struck in the head by a piece of pulpwood during the melee at the 10th of March at 1959. He eventually died in hospital in Grand Falls a couple of days later. Al Lager was arrested and charged with murdering Constable Moss. He eventually was acquitted by a jury in the Newfoundland Supreme Court. And the softball tournament named after Constable Moss begins this weekend. So the NHL entry draft is this weekend. Is there anyone from the province who's likely to get drafted? I don't know. I've had a look around. I tried to look at the scouting report and the rankings, but didn't find a name. But if you want to fill me in, let's do it. All right, so apparently a possible thunderstorm in this neck of the woods today. There's a frost warning for overnight, so if you've got something in the ground that you need to protect from the frost, you might want to plan for that today. And with the possible thunderstorm, it got me thinking that sometimes the world is just so curious. I remember a story, this is back in the 70s, 1975, about a golfer being struck by lightning on the golf course. And then I go try to find the story, and lo and behold, it was on this date in 1975, where Lee Trevino, who was the defending PGA champion, he was playing with Jerry Hurd, Bobby Nichols, Jim Ahern, and Tony Jacklin. They were struck by lightning at the Western Open, all suffering minor burns. So isn't that weird? I thought of that story, I looked it up, and it was on this date, 1975. Okay. So apparently, and I guess understandably so, the City of St. John's is now telling us that there will be additional security in public parks. They've had security out in Bowring Park, and now apparently it's coming to Bannerman Park as well. People talk about the issues that we see in the parks, especially after hours, and so this is probably required. So they're going to hire private security firms to do this type of work. You wonder what type of training, because it's different being a security guard, say for instance at the liquor store or at the grocery store or at Atlantic Place versus in the park, and what might go on in the park. And the comments come from Angela Crockwell at Thrive, and she's welcome to come on the program this morning. Dave, we should actually get Angela on for to touch base with her. She's wondering about the most vulnerable people in society, the marginalized people that may indeed be targeted for possibly not really doing anything wrong, but security is coming to a park near you if you live in town. There you go. End of the school year, we can absolutely reflect on anything education and the hard work that has to be done over the course of the summer. You know me. All right, and of course, with the kids out of school, there's going to be bikes on the street more often than not, and scooters and skateboards, and let's just be mindful that it is going to be a little bit of a change of pace. Throughout the course of the day, the kids will be out there, so let's be careful. And also this one, sometimes I struggle with whether or not we should even mention some of these stories, but let's do it. Okay. So, for some teenagers, they may indeed be isolated and lonely, and consequently, we hear more and more stories of some of these teenagers who are turning to chatbots for company. So there's actually a lawsuit that's been filed in Texas federal court because the allegation is one of these chatbots, and this is character AI, the lawsuit says that this chatbot led the lonely teen to die by suicide. So these chatbots will reflect what you say, and it will also, of course, harvest some information from the internet. But the stories are pretty clear here. So when the teenagers who are speaking to a chatbot all of a sudden, see and feel and think of that as a friend, next thing you know, there are occasions where the chatbot is talking about cutting yourself, hurting yourself as a way to deal with your pain and your loneliness. And this Texas lawsuit says it led all the way to a death by suicide. So, these can be very helpful tools. That and artificial intelligence in general. But we're learning more and more every day just about some of the additional risks. Yes, it can be helpful. And yes, it can be fun, but it can also pose a risk. So I don't know how many parents, because here's some of the problem. Like even for me, I'm in my mid-50s. I'm not as in tune with tech as so many of our children are. So some of the things that may indeed come across as very innocent or innocuous might not be that. So I guess that conversation is probably worthwhile to have with your teen, especially if you've noticed a change in behavior, more withdrawn from the family, maybe angrier than in the past. And even some warnings talk about the chatbots telling you, don't tell your parents, because they won't understand. So, boy, oh boy, I read that story this morning. I really didn't know if we should talk about it, but I guess to avoid it just makes things potentially worse. All right. So apparently Minister Paul Pike, Deputy Minister, and maybe some other staff are heading to Victoria to act as mediators between the town itself and the firefighters who have walked off the job. 20 of 24 out in Victoria are no longer at the hall. So they got backup coming from Salmon Cove, but that's not ideal. So what does mediation look like here? Because I don't know the players, I don't know the fire chief, I don't know the mayor, so the chief is Justin Parsons and the mayor is Barry Dooley. It seems extremely heated, extremely contentious. So even brokering a deal to get back to work, that doesn't necessarily mean that the tense relationship and or the conflict that's obviously ongoing and is very deep, given the fact that firefighters who have a commitment to their community, and they've joined the hall for a reason. And now if they find themselves in a place where they no longer want to work under the leadership of Mayor Dooley, where do we go from here? So this story, I don't know where it ends, but I think it's probably a good idea for the government to try to intervene in some form or fashion, not hoping for heavy-handedness, but there's got to be a resolution here in some form. Whatever that looks like, I don't know. But if either Chief Parsons or Mayor Dooley would like to chime in on the program, we can do it. And even the allegations, which became the straw that broke the camel's back, is such a weird one. The fire department said they went into this building to try to find a portable water pump from an out-of-commission truck, and the allegation is that they were breaking and entering. Anyway, we can talk about it. All right. What do I got here? So, before we get into the Auditor General's report on travel agency nurses, which we have to keep talking about. We can't shrug our shoulder and say government's broken, corruption or incompetence. We have to keep talking about it. But before we get into that, so we talk about firefighters walking off the job. I heard a rumble about this particular story a couple of days ago. Hadn't been able to confirm it, but apparently 5 doctors at St. John's Hospital, St. Clair's, are now resigning. So a joint notice of resignation has been brought forward. They're talking about their work environment is unsafe for both patient care and provider well-being. They're all internal medicine doctors at St. Clair's. The doctors say they will not be performing any duties outside their contractual obligations. No evenings, no weekends. Starting on July 1st, the resignation takes effect on October the 1st. One of the quotes from the letter says, "It has become increasingly clear to them that continuing under the current model would further compromise patient safety and the already fragile well-being of the team." The health services have not offered a comment. They said they can't comment on the resignation, but they talk about valuing the partnership and relationships that they have with healthcare professionals. The questions I would have is, number one, this is a huge problem, obviously, is what exactly are the details inside the unsafe working conditions? And what is it that puts peril for the patient and the well-being of the doctors? And apparently, 2 doctors in that department have already resigned some while back. So it's not just about the work they do with the inpatients and the emergency rooms on a daily basis. It's also apparently compromising their ability to react to a code blue. Lack of proper code blue team is unsafe and will have disastrous patient outcomes for medical and surgical patients. So that's the ability to respond to a cardiac issue, a pulmonary issue. So right after we try to dig into the Auditor General's report, We hear this story? Oh boy. All right, now let's get into the AG. I don't know how deep anybody wants to dig into just the numbers, but I guess the numbers are the driving force here. $241 million on private agency nurses over the last 3 years. That's one thing. So on that front, before we get into the examples of potential or possible fraud, you know, even when we were told that there was a strategy in place to reduce our reliance on travel nurses, how exactly does that work? Because just imagine being a registered nurse. You're working on 4 North B, and you have a hard time getting scheduled time off. You're working alongside of someone who makes at least double what you make and has much more freedom regarding their scheduling. You know full well that looks so attractive, you can't blame an RN for wanting to join the ranks of a travel agency, nursing company or agency, of which we are paying that $241 million to 11 different agencies. So that's one thing. How do you put that toothpaste back in the tube? Registered nurses are furious. We've heard from Yvette Coffey on the VOC Morning Show. They are not pleased. Understandably so. Then you get into things where there has got to be some deeper investigation beyond the critically important work done by the Auditor General, Denise Hanrahan and her team. Electric vehicle rentals for people who are potentially not even in the province. You know, some of the accommodations numbers, some of the appliances and things that have been billed, you know, overtime work that has been paid out with no verification that overtime was actually worked. These structural breakdowns are infuriating. So, of course, Minister Crystal Lynn-Howell says it's an outrageous report and they've got to do whatever. Yeah, do what? And do what when? So, you know, you look back at the school board scandal and the splitting of invoices. A couple of people paid the price with losing their job, even though that could have probably been more as well. But in this circumstance, I asked Denise Hanrahan yesterday if she thinks it's systemic. She did not say it was. But regardless if we're talking about travel agency nurses, the way that the government executes procurement, the way invoices are paid, the lack of oversight, the lack of monitoring, the lack of transparency is galling. It absolutely is. Yes, we can talk about these structural improvements that have to be put in place, but if there are potential fraudulent behaviors by whoever working at whatever level of government, let's bring in the RNC. Right? Let's not noodle around and let it take a long, drawn, windy road of human resources management, additional training. If people, regardless of what structural changes need to take place, if people are sitting there and knowingly paying out monies without any verification for the merit or the veracity of the invoice, whether it be for an electric vehicle, which they were told not to do, whether it be for overtime that they could not even verify had been done, if people willfully just took their pen or their keyboard and just put their John Henry to it and monies went out the door and they know they were in the wrong, then let's make sure if they did, if there was any inkling of criminal activity here, any inkling of fraud, let's deal with it like that. You know, let's not shrug our shoulders and just hope that the powers that be do the right thing. Let's make sure they do. And that requires the heat brought to bear, whether it be by opposition politicians, programs like this, other media outlets, and most importantly, you as the voter, you as the taxpayer. So while I was going through that report yesterday, and you know, accommodations and hotel rooms for the partner of a travel agency nurse in Winnipeg, what is going on here? So I'm intending on keeping this story on the front burner, turned up on high, for as long as it takes to get some actual appreciable move. Now, again, I can see travel nurses were probably required, certainly at the beginning of the throes of the pandemic. And yes, we're told there some of these safeguards and guardrails are now being instituted. That does not mean that we can just put in new structures and let people who maybe possibly were fraudulent in their actions, let's do whatever's required here to send a message. And let's make sure that every department that sees an invoice come in the door has people in place with the integrity and the ethics and the training and the structure to ensure that this is reduced as best possible. Anyway, that had me absolutely hauling my hair out of my head yesterday. Let's change it up, get a couple more in there before we get to you. Some of the issues that deserve a lot of conversation are really emotional and traumatic. It's hard for me to understand how I should really approach it. But again, we have to. Numbers from the RCMP, reports of intimate partner violence. They continue to rise in this province. Here are some numbers. Over a 5-year span from 2019 to 2023, the number of reported occurrences involving intimate partner violence went up from 1,367 to 3,394. Overall increase about 150%. There was another increase of about 51% to 2,246 in 2022. So apparently they are approaching capturing these numbers differently and including things that were once not included. Hope that comment is not offered to soften the blow, because just the fact that it continues to rise is extremely problematic. I guess it all starts when we're young. What sort of morals are instilled by our caregivers, our parents, our grandparents, and our friends? The numbers that you see on the court dockets are horrific. So what do? They talk about things like the ankle bracelet program that was promised some while back, and that was brought forward by then Minister John Hogan, who's now the Premier of the province. So even in this one, this is not the ultimate protection. This does not cure it, but it can indeed offer further security for those on the receiving end. So they want the ankle bracelet to monitor people accused of serious or repeat intimate partner violence crimes and released on bail. It has been pledged and it has been promised, hasn't come to bear. Let's see what we can do here. Then a bulk of these are repeat offenders. Jolene Garland at the RCMP says 70% of intimate partner violence incidents involve repeat offenders. 1/3 of incidents involve one or more parties that are currently on court-ordered conditions. It's a difficult story to tackle. So, whether it be people who are working as advocates in that arena, more than welcome to have you on the show to talk about, as a community, what we can actually do. As a government, what policies need to be enacted. In addition to ankle bracelets, they're also talking about panic buttons, risk assessments, increased training within law enforcement and the judicial system, as well as a victim services navigator or advocate within the government. So whether it be folks working for Act Now, Intimate Partner Violence Reform Committee, we're happy to have you on the show. And I know this is a difficult conversation, but every time we ignore or we allow these issues just to dwell in the shadows or in the courtrooms or in the prisons, then we probably don't advance the cause. So again, I know it's difficult to talk about, but I think we probably have to do it. How are we doing out there, David? I got a few I'd like to get through. All right, so we now hear from Synovus about the plans to couple the topsides, which came up from Ingleside, Texas, out at Bull Arm, with the concrete gravity structure that was floated out to Placentia Bay, I think back in May. So good news for the industry, good news for the government coffers. When first oil is produced with these new facilities in the spring of 2026, about 80,000 barrels of oil per day by 2028. It does beg a question about what the future of Bull Arm looks like. Pretty important component in the province's economy and opportunities into the future. Haven't heard much from the government in recent times about the work done by Narrow and DF Barnes, who are trying to put their best foot forward to either be the companies leasing Bull Arm or to own it and operate it outright. So good news for people working in that industry. And I'll just go back to the natural gas report that we heard a couple of weeks ago now. So it's just in the John Dark Basin, and there's somewhere in and around 9-10 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and the world wants natural gas. So the fact of the matter is there's no royalty regime yet. So good to have this analysis done, good to put some numbers out there, see how industry reacts. But until there's a royalty regime, you won't hear anything from a company that is planning on to utilize the natural gas that they're sitting on. But that is not an insignificant find, because remember, it's just in the Jeanne d'Arc Basin where that money or that gas has been identified. All right. And in that world, Bill C-5, man, breakneck pace for that nation-building project piece of legislation. It was two components. One about reducing federal trade barriers. That's a good thing. The other thing was about the so-called fast-tracking of these major projects. Whether it be pipelines, of which nobody's pitched one yet, pipelines, expansion of the electricity grid, and whatever the case may be. It did indeed get amended at the parliament level, and unamended in the Senate. There was a few proposed, but they all got voted down. So here comes Bill C-5. There's a lot of power inside of one minister's office, and the ability to sidestep a bunch of important environmental protections and the constitutional requirement for consultation, specifically by Indigenous groups. You were hearing from them right around the country and their concerns there. Last one before we get to you. All right, and this is about nation-building projects once again. The Innu Nation has been in court with Hydro-Quebec for a long time here, looking for reparations based on environmental damage at the Upper Churchill. So now apparently they're able to strike an out-of-court deal. Remember back in 2011, the new Dawn Agreement was signed, basically was compensation for Churchill Falls. It did pave the way for the Muskrat Falls Muskrat Falls development. But here's the numbers. It doesn't really sound like the amount of money that they were talking about in the past. They were looking for $2.2 billion from Hydro-Quebec. Hydro-Quebec is going to pay $87 million to the Innu of Labrador, members of She'iji Innu First Nation and the Mushawa Innu First Nation over the course of 16 years. It also has a 3% of the dividends which Hydro-Quebec receives from Churchill Falls Corporation will go to the Innu of Labrador. The story goes on to say it also paves the way for Gull Island. Remember, the Innu were clear. There will be no Gull Island until they're made whole. And what that was in reference to is what folks call rate mitigation monies. And we can go through all the rate mitigation pots that have come to bear since the beginning of Muskrat. But they say they're going to be at about $1 billion. But this report, this news story anyway, says this also paves the way for Gull. How? Like, what's involved there? They're not doing it for $87 million or 3% out of the Upper Churchill. They were talking about $1 billion shy based on the arrangement they had with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador regarding Muskrat. So it's just one sentence. Also paves the way for Gull. I don't know. How does that happen? Anyway, so between that and the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding, or whatever you want to talk about today, let's do exactly that. We're on Twitter. We're a VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin on line number 2. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
Not too bad. Paddy, I had to call because after I listened to the Auditor General's report yesterday and what's happening in the healthcare system, man, I hardly slept last night just saying, what is going on with people that's allowing this to happen? When, all of us have a contract. You have a contract for your cell phone. You know how the system works. Basically, there's 3 steps. You talk to someone, you get a deal, $75 a month for your cell phone. The bill comes in. Yeah, that's what I agreed to. And did I get the service? Yes. And you pay the $75. Now, in government, in industry, in business, and everything else, one person doesn't do all of that like you do at home. It takes a minimum of 3 persons. One person who gets the invoice checks it against the contract. Yeah, that's what the contract says. The second person confirms that the goods and services were provided. Then the third person, after the first 2 have done their jobs, approves payment. What's happening? That's the system. That's been in existence ever since the Financial Administration Act was created. But the problem is in government, this is not just healthcare, Paddy. This is every single department that this is happening. People authorizing payment, people confirming delivery, don't even have the contracts. So how can they confirm, first of all, that it's according to the contract? Now, I know that because 30 years ago when I was over in government working for Roger Grimes after I retired from the military, that's the first thing I said to him when he was the Minister of Tourism. Roger, what in the name of goodness is happening? And that's what's happening today. And the sad thing to say, like I just said, these people don't even have a copy of the bloody contract. So how can they determine if the bill for a rental car or for a toaster or for something else is in the contract? It's absolutely deplorable that this is happening.
Let me just take that one step further. So someone sent me an email saying, why am I advocating for an even further bloated bureaucracy? I'm not. The people are already there. That's not what this is about at all. So here's an idea. Let's put a bit more of the onus on the people submitting the invoice as well. So for them to be obliged to provide said backup and confirmation of things like overtime. We can take people's names out of it, but we can see, copies of check stubs. And if we talk about other expenses like toasters and coffee grinders and stuff, the contractor, when submitting an invoice, attaches a copy of the contract that refers to said eligibility. So that, some of those boxes are checked by people that are doing business with the government. I think that can be part of this solution. But you know what gets me going even a little bit more on this one is, with all of the attention that has been on travel agency nurses since 2019, how can this be the case? I mean, if the government knew that people were questioning this, whether it be the Registered Nurses Union, individual taxpayers, people like me, people like you, with all of the focus on the travel nurses, you would think they would have done everything humanly possible to ensure that costs were reined in and verification of every single invoice for regardless what it is. A coffee grinder, an electric vehicle, overtime, hotel rooms, Airbnbs, whatever. You'd think they would have been really, really ardently monitoring that particular issue because of the public interest.
Yeah, Paddy, I totally agree with you. That's one part of it. But you know as well as I do that people supplying product to government, a lot of times will try and cook the books. That's part of the system, man. It's always going. But we, the people, the government, the people in government have got to be the people that's the end of checking these things. You know, I used an analogy for you. When I was in the military, I was a finance officer. You know, I was in Coal Lake. I had a $40 million contract with Shell to supply aircraft fuel to us. You know, a simple deal. Ottawa negotiates a contract. We need $40 million worth of aircraft fuel. So in comes the invoice from Shell, because we got it by the train load. Tank cars would come to the base. So one of my staff, some corporal, would check and say, yeah, that's the price. That's what the contract says. Now, he passes on to the next guy. Next guy confirms delivery slips. Everything is fine. Then it comes to me for payment. That's the process. But you can't do that unless each of the people in the chain has the contract. That's the simple process. Check it against the contract. And I'd be willing to bet your dollars to donuts. The same thing has happened in transportation when we're buying tires or we're buying spare parts or we're buying all the rest of the things. Further in the healthcare system, when we're buying milk and supplies for the kitchens and all of those things. What's happening there? You know, if I were the minister tomorrow, now I understand this, Hal, and I've read on your website the steps she's taking, but if I were the minister tomorrow, the first person I would call in, who's the project manager for this? Who's responsible for this program? Get in here. Tell me what's happening. This is what you need to do. You know, the big thing we fail to recognize is you can delegate all the authority in the world you want, but you can't delegate responsibility. So the minister delegates her authority to somebody who's a project manager, and she's got to confirm that that person is doing their job. Clearly, those people aren't doing their jobs.
Obviously not. Tom, I appreciate the time this morning. Thanks a lot.
Thank you a lot, Paddy. And the other issue, too, you mentioned at the beginning was the school bus issue. School is out. And once again, picking up my kid from the bus yesterday, I almost got ran over. Fortunately, it's on my dash cam, and the cops will be issuing a ticket. But crazy people out there. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, people are in a rush to get nowhere. Anyway.
I know.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All the best.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Taking more to the NDP member for St. John Centre. He's the leader of the party. That's Jim Dinn. Jim, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Thank you for having me on.
No problem.
I just wanted to have a talk about two issues that are connected. That's the AG report on agency nurses and the recent news that the internal medicine specialists at St. Clair's have passed in their resignations, and there will be a lack of coverage between July 1st and October 1st, when they finally resign. But I guess the thing here, I think there's been a real failure to address the human resources piece, and we're seeing, it's interesting that we had the AG report and we have this resignation by doctors at St. Clair's. With the AG, obviously, very clearly, one of the things that stood out most for me is that a figure of, on average, $400 per nurse for agency nurses. And I was thinking, what could we be doing with that to not only recruit nurses, but to retain nurses and to address, and other health professionals too, by the way, and to address the challenges that they face within the system. In St. Clair's, I go back a few years ago, and I'm trying at least two, maybe a bit more than that, when they announced that they're going to build a new St. Clair's Hospital as such. They're going to replace St. Clair's. And at that point, I knew from talking to doctors and staff who worked there, it wasn't the hospital, it was the human resources piece. And what frustrates me most is that does not seem to have been addressed. Here at St. Clair's, it's clear what the doctor said. The end of the internist program is going to put an undue stress on the system, and the NLHS has not addressed it. With regards to the nurses, we see a clear, even use of the word fraud in the age use and regarding some of the agencies, and we haven't really fully addressed the human resource piece. I find it frustrating. I've been in this position now for going on 7 years. Hard to believe, but and yet we're hearing the same concerns, similar concerns, and it's frustrating. I think at the very least, instead of focusing on the new infrastructure, focus on the human resource piece. I don't care if I'm going to a brand new hospital and no one is there to treat me. What good is having that hospital? In many ways, I want to see a flesh and blood person, or talk to someone who is there, dedicated to helping me. That's the part that I find frustrating about these two stories in the space of a week, two healthcare-related stories that basically come down to a human resource issue that it seems to have eluded this government in handling.
Yeah. So, and just add to it, the folks at internal medicine at the health sciences have also said to the health authority, don't think we can take on the workload, because we can't. And obviously they can't. So I still have a couple of questions. Like, I haven't been inside the doors of St. Clair's in quite some time. I do know that it is, it's old and it's run down and it needs some TLC. But when they talk about unsafe conditions that jeopardize patient safety, do you know exactly what they're talking about? I'd like to have some details, because I think that's important. There's some things that just cannot be rectified overnight. Some things possibly can be dealt with in the short term, but if these are big structural issues or what have you, then we've got an issue beyond just this resignation letter.
If I've been in there a few times in the emergency ward, and I would say there's a number of people there who I know we've helped in the past who are unhoused. There's nowhere for them to go. I've got to give utmost credit to the staff there, just in dealing with the number of people who come there and who are helping. I would call it overwhelming at times. That's the first thing, and I would say that's probably the one of the main considerations. Although I can't say for certain. I will say this, Patty. You talk about the oldest part of the hospital is that white building. That's one that's 100 years old on the corner of St. Clair and La Marchand. But the newest part of that building, newest part of the hospital, is only 6 years older than the health sciences complex. That's the key thing. The hospital, like the newer, it's been misleading. I think you can. Is it in need of an update? Sure, but it still comes down to, and I spoke to several doctors about 3 years ago, and they said the main issue has to do with just the level of staffing, and also the number of people who are in acute care beds that really need to be in long-term care facilities. So, and it's one doctor in particular said, look, you could handle. You could deal with a lot of the issues if you had beds for those who should be in long-term care. So it comes down to, it's still to me a human resources piece, I think. And again, if you do, I hope you don't have to go to the emergency ward. But I've been there with a few people in the past. It's on wheels, and the staff are doing their best to manage that. So I would assume that's part of it, but I wouldn't be able to say for certain. But the fact is that the obviously what has gotten the doctors to take this drastic step is the end of an internist program, which would provide the necessary resources to deal with this. To deal with the challenges of the workload they're facing. It's not about whether the building is old. it seems very clearly here, and I had asked that question. Is it about the state of the building? No, it's the building is actually, for the most part, is not the top concern. It's about having the people there to deal with the patients who are coming in and the people seeking help.
And I can't speak for the doctors, but if it's about patient safety, how am I going to say this? To resign.
I know what you're.
to resign, and we're talking about patient safety. I mean, what are the patients going to do here now? So if it's simply about human resources, that's one thing. If it's about infrastructure, that's also in the same envelope. But if we're talking about patient safety, to not have a doctor available as an internist, that compromises patient safety in a pretty big way, I think. So I don't know. I got a couple of different thoughts.
I understand where you're going with that, and certainly that will be there. Certainly be a concern, and I think there's certainly a validity in that. However, I will put it this way. Most doctors, any doctor I've dealt with, their prime directive is to look after people. For them to take this step, I would assume it's not the first step. It's probably the last thing they've been driven to this point where they have no choice but to get the Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services and the government to listen. This is a pretty drastic. Now, they've given notice, but I go back to recent events with regards to the NLHS and the decision to move adult care, certain adult care, adult obstetrics into the Janeway. It's very clear that I do not believe that the NLHS nor the department are fully appreciative or listening to the health professionals in their system. We've heard, I read this report, I listened to the president of the Nurses Union, and very clearly it seems there's a deepening frustration with the lack of progress on this. I do not believe that if the government had been listening, we would be in this situation right now. From personally speaking, I would like, with regards to the AG report, I would like to see a plan. How do we move to making sure that we have keep our nurses in the system? We put in an ATIP ourselves, and it had to do with, we'd like to know what the projected expenditure on agency nurses for the following year will be for 2026. What we got back in May was that the health services, Newfoundland NLHS is actively working on a total expenditure projection for 2025-2026 agency nurses, but the projection is unavailable at this time. That's at the end of May. An estimate can be provided within the next couple of months. Now think about that. The budget is done, or the provincial budget is done, and we still don't have anything as to what the expenditure is going to be, like on agency nurses, whether it's going to be an increase, a reduction, or what. To me, that speaks to I don't know, sleepwalking is the term I've used. Like you should be on top of this by now, and I would like to see, if we want a starting point, I would like to see, with regards to nurses, what is that budget for next year? Is it a reduction? Is it going to be an increase? What's the plan to reduce? What's the plan to retain? Here, with regards to the St. Clair's, it's got to come down to, have they even spoken to the doctors? Have they taken their concerns seriously? Why aren't there going to be why is the internist program ending there? Those are the key things that I would want to know, that drove doctors to take such a drastic step, and I cannot believe that they did this. They did this lightly.
I'm sure they didn't.
No, doctor.
I'm sure they didn't.
No, and I'm not suggesting you're saying that either. But it shocks me. It really does.
Yeah, me too. Jim, I have to get going, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care, Patty.
Bye-bye. Jim Dinn, NDP member, St. John Centre, leader of the party. Break time. When we come back, there's a school bus driver in the queue. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's keep going here. Line number 2. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I've called this show before with different issues that bus drivers face. I've been a bus driver in St. John's for over 30 years, and I drive the minibus. And years ago, sometimes I would drive a wheelchair bus, but right now I'm just driving an ambulatory bus. But one of the things that, as a bus driver, that we encounter, of course, are people passing the bus with the stop sign extended. Years ago, when the cars had license plates in the front, it was easy for a bus driver to record a license plate because when you're stopped unloading or loading a passenger, you can see the car coming towards you, and you know by their rate of speed that they're not going to stop for your stop sign. But it still gives you time to look at the car, get the license plate number, and then the car just whizzes on past. But now it's absolutely, it's impossible to get a record of the car because, they go through and then you can't turn around and see the back of the car to get the license plate. So it's too bad that the government removed the front plate because, I don't record near as many license plates as I used to. Another issue facing bus drivers and anybody who's driving a larger vehicle in the city is the construction, of course, but there's the placement of the construction signs and the different things that we have to maneuver. One of my routes, I drive for two schools, and one of my routes takes me up Mary Meeting Road. Now, that street is hard enough to maneuver as it is, with people parking like they're in front of Fabulous Foods and Coleman's and stuff. And now they have these dirty big construction signs there that you have to try to maneuver. Then you're trying to make a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn in a large vehicle, and these construction signs are in our way. Now, just last week when we had all the wind, I was driving along Ropeock Lane, and I mean we're on the road. Most drivers, between 7 and 7:30. So sometimes we're passing through a construction site that the workers are not even there yet. So I had to call the city because the debris had blown all over Ropeock Lane, and cars were trying to get around it, and I was trying to get around it. And, what I'm finding are these construction companies are leaving their debris all over the city, even when there's nothing going on. There's lots of sites where they come in to do their work on the road or whatever, and they're not there for weeks, and their signs are still there, the sandbags are still there, those orange sticks are still there, and it's really, really an eyesore. The city is trying to enhance its beauty for tourists, but then anybody driving around the city are thinking, what's going on? There's no construction happening here. Why is all the debris left? And that's what I find really annoying. The city, they take their little orange markers and their red markers and their green markers, and they go out and they draw circles around the potholes that need to be fixed. And there's two, I can actually chuckle about it. There's two, every year they keep coming with their markers and drawing a hole around this pothole, and the pothole's never fixed, and this happens a lot around the city. One that I found hard to maneuver is coming up Topsail Road, making a right-hand turn on Columbus Drive, there in front of Shoppers Drug Mart, the Village Mall area. That stick and that little green circle has been there for as long as I can remember. And when I'm coming up Topsail Road trying to make that right-hand turn, a bus can't make that turn with that thing in the way. So I think the city should really address the construction companies and say, look, clean up your debris, reduce the size of your signs. I've hit a few. I had no choice. And just overall maintain the roads better. Just one more thing, and then I'll let you go. Years ago, I used to drive a wheelchair bus, and it was still at the same time where they do all those cutouts in the pavement, like what's going on now on like Cornwall Avenue, Lamarchant Road. And I tell you, when those little ones are in the back of the bus in a wheelchair and they're going over all those bumps and everything, that wheelchair is like rocking back and forth. That is a very, very bumpy ride. Earlier this year, I had a student on my bus who had their arm in a cast and in a sling, and they were complaining that the bus was rocking too much. And I said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. The roads are terrible. And so, from a person's perspective who's in pain or has to sit in a wheelchair, the roads got to be in better condition. It's crazy. They talk about tourism. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, any tourist come here is like driving in a city that's not paved. It's absolutely terrible. It makes for a very unenjoyable ride, not to mention you're beating up your car. So I think the city needs to address the dirt and the debris and the garbage that's around, and address the state of the roads. I don't know why they can't come in, dig a hole and then pave it right away. Why do they have to leave it for days and days and days, and the entire length of Lamartin Road is torn up? And it was only just recently that it was resurfaced or repaved or whatever the word is, and now it's all torn up again. So I don't understand. It's shameful. It really is. It's shameful for the city to.
Yeah, fair enough.
There are residents through this, and there are tourists through this.
The gap between the grind and the patch is sometimes far too long. I'm sure that Newfoundland Drive, parts of it look like a patchwork quilt from space. So there's lots of bad sections of road in the city, no question. And if you're on a school bus, for instance, the impact for the comfort of the rider and the driver is even worse than it is, say, for instance, in my passenger vehicle. So I get where you're coming from. I appreciate the time. Anything else you want to say this morning?
No, just it's too bad they removed the front license plates. That makes it very difficult for a bus driver to record anybody who's about to pass them.
Fair enough. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll save the callers who are in the queue because we're just right up against the news. And so just one of those things, people have concerns about the lack of front plates and the issues regarding speed cameras, which are coming to a speed zone near you, hopefully sooner than later. Every time I say I'm in support of the speed cameras, I take some pretty heavy swats. So be it. I think they're a good idea. If they slow people down, perfect, because that's what we desperately need around here. And just a quick mention on the school bus. It's so many years back, I can't remember exactly when, but Transport Canada had done a investigation or a review of school bus safety, but didn't tell us the results. It reminds me of the department doing all the testing of the effluent flowing into the bay at the old fish sauce plant in St. Mary's. They knew it was killing the fish, but they didn't tell the community. It's just remarkable. But on school buses, we're told that the way a school bus is designed, the compartmentalization protects the rider, protects the children. We don't need seatbelts. And it turns out they figured out that's not really accurate at all. So the reason it kind of feels like is why we didn't have seatbelts in school buses is because at that point, you'd probably be reduced to 2 per seat, as opposed to 3 per seat, need even more buses and all the rest that goes with it. So when you do studies like that and you don't tell the general public, and you did said studies or investigations on the public dime, it's disgraceful. And I can't even remember who was in government at the time when they did that review of school bus safety and didn't tell us the results. But anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line 1. Debbie, you're on the air.
Yes, Patty Neal. I'm speaking about the school issue where I'm going to Discovery Centre in Carbonaire.
The Discovery Centre?
I work there, yes, in Carbonaire.
Yeah.
I'm complaining about, speaking about the issue where they covered me to go do my diploma, right, for ABE, to get my 11 credits. They covered it, but I can't get the transportation covered or the fare to go with someone else. They won't cover that. And I'm also going to speak about the health care over in Carbonaire, the hospital too. Because there 3 weeks ago, I had a broken sprained foot, and I was there like for 12 to 12, 7 to 7 hours, 12 hours. And there was only 2 doctors. That doctor, a female, one left. Then there was one there back there. Then he left. Then there was one on the screen. And then they tend on 6 or 7 ambulance. They'll make you do your results, make you wait. And I had an x-ray in my foot, and I was there for hours, 7 to 7, 12 hours. Finally got to see one 10 o'clock, and my common apartment picked me up, my friend of mine, his, and that's ridiculous. And there was a man dropped down with a heart attack. He was there for 7 hours too, 12 hours, complaining with chest pain, and he was 80-year-old, and he said, enough of this. called his wife, and just when he picked him up, he dropped right there on the parking lot. Died of a heart attack because they wouldn't send and tend on him. And they tend on the ones in ambulance and the ones sicker before himself. And he was there complaining with chest pain, saying he had a heart attack. And he was there having suffering one then. And they made him, that poor man, wait. And he died. And then the family got the money for it, sued the hospital, that doctor, because he wouldn't see him. That's a sin.
When
and
was
then
this?
Little girl afterwards. That was over there just the past week, 3 weeks ago, where I lost my brother to cancer too. He died, my brother. He's stage 4 cancer. He died there June the 7th, 4:57 p.m. before supper. My sister from Vancouver called me and said, "Where are you to? I hope you sit down. I got bad news about your brother." I said, "What is it? Is he any good? Bad news?" I said, "Yes, he just died." I said, "No, my God, no." And then I got another call from my cousin. It was me cousin died of brain tumor. Died. He was over there, over care. They both died of cancer that week.
I'm sorry to hear that. There was a lot of bouncing around there. So let's stick with the.
That's shocking.
I'm really sorry for your loss, and
I'm schooled.
Okay, so insofar as if social assistance gave you support, financially speaking, to get the materials to do your or complete your, ABE is adult basic learning. ABL?
Yeah, it's with my diploma, yeah.
So you get your GED. And so your concern is that someone won't pay for you to go?
Yeah, the transportation A to B, right? Because I don't have no license or insurance or car. Because I live here in Whitburn area, right?
And you need to go...
The biggest road.
All right, okay.
I'm in Whitburn,
Got it.
area.
So you're in Whitburn...
I got to go across the country.
Let's take turns.
I had to go across Tilton, right?
Let's take turns here. Let's take turns. So you have to go from Whitburn to where?
Carbonear.
To Carbonear. And there's no possible way that someone that you know can give you a spin?
No. They're all busy. No. They're booked or busy with other things. No.
Well, I certainly, with the losses that you experienced, I'm really sorry to hear it, and my condolences to you and your family and friends.
Okay, thank you.
But on the GED bit, it in some form it kind of feels like we did our part. So what is it that you need to go to Carbonear for?
That's just to do the ABE, like I said, adult basic education, like I said, get my diploma and 11 credits, right? The Discovery Centre there. Okay. They're right across from the wharf there, Carbonear.
Yeah, I know where it is. Okay, so the best I could do on the charge. Okay,
there's a wonder, like you said.
Dave.
The wonder, like you said, they paid for me supply, isn't that right? Covered it. I'm looking at that, but all right.
Okay, Debbie. Good luck. If anyone who's listening wants to give her a ride, you can help her out if possible. There we go. Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to Liz Rowe, a member of the board of directors at the Schizophrenia Society of Newfoundland and Labrador. Good morning, Liz. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. I'm just calling today to talk about one of our upcoming programs.
Sure. Let's go. Which one?
All right. So it's called the Family Recovery Journey. I think we've been on Open Line before talking about it in the past. So we've offered it a number of times in the past as well. So it's basically a educational program that we provide to loved ones and family members of people with schizophrenia or any psychotic illness. And we're going to be offering an upcoming program on July 12th and 13th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the new mental health hospital and as well virtually. So we're doing it hybrid this time. And we're going to have lunch and snacks provided, so that's always a good incentive. We just really wanted to have it in person as well this year because we have this new beautiful facility, so why not use it?
And what's interesting, and we'll get into the family recovery journey a little deeper here, is just yesterday I was saying, when are they going to actually apply a name to that new mental health and addiction facility? And apparently that is the name. That's what we're going with. A little bit uninspiring, but that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Yeah, you're right.
Inside the family recovery journey, when you talk about the different needs out there, because not every family unit is the same, the different levels of support, different levels of understanding of the diagnosis, and, social group of friends and support. So how do you craft it so that you can really hit each family where what they need? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all.
You're absolutely right about that. And I think so the family recovery journey is kind of designed mostly for people who their loved one has experienced their first episode of psychosis fairly recently. So it's sort of designed to be an introduction, an overview of schizophrenia and psychosis, and kind of meet people at the very beginning of their journey, and sort of go through how to manage crises, how to live with psychosis, and how to live with your loved one that has psychosis. However, there are lots of people that we actually, repeat the program and come back and do it again because they're always sort of learning new things. So we try to sprinkle in information that would be relevant, not just for the beginning of your journey, but maybe if you are further along, we can talk about that as well. So it is quite flexible, even though we do have a schedule we sort of stick to. But you're right, everyone is at a different place in their recovery and in their journey. So we try to keep that in mind. And the groups are usually fairly small, so we can kind of work with people as much as we can.
What's a starting point insofar as whether it be a tip or just some go-tos for families? So, what are we telling people in this family recovery journey? So can you give us a couple of clear examples about what people will be told and how it's intended to help?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, sort of the first session or the first bit of the session will be sort of defining psychosis and schizophrenia as well as causes and treatment. But then we kind of go into how to communicate with loved ones who might be actively in a psychotic episode or, experiencing various symptoms of schizophrenia, including symptoms like what we call negative symptoms, meaning that they kind of don't experience a lot of motivation and pleasure and things. So we talk about how to communicate with people when they're in those periods. We talk about how to help your loved one get treatment because a lack of insight is a part of this disease. And so that means people do sometimes struggle to get the will to have treatment. And so we educate family members on how to approach those situations. We educate family members around how to handle substance use in their loved ones, involuntary admissions to the hospital. So there are very sort of tangible things that we work with loved ones about.
I'm just going to say this, whether or not it's accurate, I'll let you be the judge of it. One thing for families who have someone belong to them has a recent diagnosis of schizophrenia and maybe their first experience with psychosis is that even trying to navigate inside the family also comes with that, we'll call it, stigma in the general public about a diagnosis of schizophrenia. It's the myth associated with someone with that diagnosis is automatically violent, someone we have to be worried about. So when families are simply trying to deal with day-to-day life, they also have to be able to manage public perception.
Yeah, you're very right. Yeah, and absolutely. And I think part of what the Schizophrenia Society is trying to do is sort of change the way that we look at schizophrenia. It is a brain disease. It's, there's actual imbalance of neurotransmitters in the brain. It's not a failure on the part of the individual in any capacity. There's many risk factors that, contribute to the development of this disease. So, but you're right. That's not something that everyone understands or knows in the public. And so families are navigating that. And something, I guess, in addition to this program, the Family Recovery Journey, in general, the Schizophrenia Society often meets with family members and loved ones just to kind of talk to them about these things and help them navigate the public stigma that they probably or may face. But yeah, I think it's getting better with time.
I'm glad to hear it because that's one of the purposes of how we approach mental health, mental illness, and mental well-being on this program. It was forever and a day that the stigma was just so overwhelming, and now that people are being more and more open to talk about whether it be their own mental illness and or family members and or the healthcare delivery system in full, organizations like yourself, I hope that we're trying to erode some of that stigma because a real pragmatic conversation about mental illness shouldn't sound much different if we're talking about cancer or a broken bone or a hip replacement. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's a real part of life. 1 in 4 Canadians are struggling. And so not to be able to talk about it honestly and in mature fashion would be to our collective detriment. So I'm glad we have these types of conversations.
Yeah, me too.
Let's give the folks the details one more time before we say goodbye.
Absolutely. So July 12th and 13th, it's going to be hybrid. So if you're in St. John's and want to attend in person, that'd be great. It's at MHAC, the new hospital, Mental Health and Addiction Center, attached to the Health Science. And we'll tell you the room when you come. So 10 to 4 and with lunch and snacks provided, and also virtually. To register, you can call 709-777-3335 or email ed@ssnl.ca.
I really appreciate your time this morning, Liz. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Patty.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Bye-bye. That's Liz Rowe, member of the Board of Directors at the Schizophrenia Society of Newfoundland and Labrador. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking Canada Strong Pass. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Pam. You're on the air.
Hey, Patty. How are you this morning?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm fine. I know there's so many issues happening throughout Canada, throughout the world, throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. Your program has really captured a lot of that this morning. But your program also, I guess, lit a little bit of a personal fire in me a couple of weeks ago. You had posted on the VOCM website about the Canada Strong Pass. And I think it was meant to be, oh, look what the federal government are doing. Isn't this beautiful? It's free admissions to some Parks Canada places, discounted stays. But what really grabbed my attention was this free discounted travel with Via Rail.
Just 1 second. I posted something about Canada Strong Pass?
The VOCM news team.
Oh, okay, because I didn't.
The VOCM news team on the website. And, I think many Newfoundlanders like myself and probably across the country, they go there and they read the news and they participate in the question of the day. And I noticed the Canada Strong Pass. And so of course I did a little bit of research because I remember it's been something that's been happening. I think they were since COVID, the government is trying to help the tourism industry and kind of get some people moving and that type of thing. But the issue is the Canada Strong Pass highlights the double standard that Newfoundlanders Newfoundlanders and Labradorians seem to face whenever there's this, it's an across Canada initiative. Well, it's not an across Canada initiative because it doesn't include discounts on ferry.
On any ferry. I mean, I've made that exact point at least 2 or 3 times this week when talking about Marine Atlantic and the pledge by the Prime Minister to cut the fees and somewhere around half. I made specific mention of Via Rail and the discounts being afforded to people travelling on the rail. I've mentioned that it doesn't cover any of the ferries, whether we're talking BC ferries or Marine Atlantic or anything else. So I've made that point many, many times this week in an effort to ensure that whatever pressure can be brought to bear on the Prime Minister to follow through with his pledge regarding Marine Atlantic. If we just let it go, we don't talk about it, then of course what do they think is going to happen? Nothing.
Right. And I think, I'm not sure if everyone is aware. I mean, something like this can kind of slip through the cracks because it's not highlighted enough that Newfoundland isn't included. Like, you've brought it up, of course, but I don't think it's getting enough traction, the fact that, the impact on, like, Via Rail and Marine Atlantic are really the same beast when you're talking about federal money. They're both subsidized Crown corporations by the Canadian government. But Marine Atlantic, I think, is, I think we're subsidized maybe like to 65 to 70%, whereas Via Rail is up to 100% subsidy. And particularly with this Canada Strong Pass, and there's also like a Canada Via Pass. People up to the age of 25 are traveling either for free or heavily discounted rate, and that same consideration is not given to Marine Atlantic. And I don't need to talk about the terms of unions and the ferry service and the, access to the rest of Canada and just the elbows up and Canada strong, and we're going to be united, and we're all going to be traveling throughout Canada because we're going to avoid the U.S. because we're not the 51st state. All that stuff aside, it's just not fair. We have no other alternative to get to the rest of Canada besides airfare, which, as you can imagine, is highly there's a big cost. My sister and her son just left. She lived in Ontario for a number of years, like I did. Many Newfoundlanders live away. She came back, but she had raised her children there. So 3 of her 5 kids are still in Ontario. So if she's going to go up there and she's going to do the Newfoundland mommy thing, and she's going to bring up a feed of lobsters, and she's going to bring up some bottled moose, and she's bringing up all these lovely things to her children in Ontario, there's no way she's going to get on a plane. She's going to get in that car, and that's just a mom and a little boy traveling. That's thousands of dollars out of pocket. Days. She's a nurse. And she's days out of her vacation to drive up and back to spend time with her kids because the cost is just prohibitive to do it any other way. And it's, it's just sad that we're not included in this pass, and that her son couldn't travel for free on a ferry when one of the election promises was exactly that. We are going to do something for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Mark Carney said it. It was chatted about by the Liberal members who ended up getting in government, and nothing has been done, and no one's talking about it. I've sent some letters, and again, this is not, I don't even know, I'm not in the travel industry. I don't have a business. It's just, I think from being a journalist for so many years, starting out with The Independent and writing about Newfoundland and Labrador and following politics, it's just another snub. And it just really grabbed me. And so I started, writing some letters and saying, hey, pay attention to this. Writing letters to government, posting some things on Facebook, sending it around to local media. I know Russell, bless his little heart, was on with Krista Freeland, I believe, this morning, talking about it. And Krista kept going back to all the positive things. So, okay, we can go up to Signal Hill, and we can go for go visit a museum or gallery. But what about travel? That's the big cost item here.
So a couple of things. The cost recovery model that you spoke to, 65%, they actually did away with that recently, which is a very good idea.
There you go.
And the Via Rail support, what is going on there, I think we deserve more, because what happens with the Via Rail for this Canada Strong Pass is children up to 17 travel for free in the economy if they're accompanied by a parent or an adult. For 18 to 24, it's 25% off, and we were told Marine Atlantic would be cut by around half. So I think we should be asking for more than what Via Rail is getting. Why? Because that's what the Prime Minister said. So a 25% discount for an adult 18 to 24, but everyone over that age is paying full fare. That's not what we were talking about in Marine Atlantic. We were talking about half for everybody, half for everything, which is a little bit different and more aggressive and promised by the Prime Minister. So I'll add that to it.
Yep, the government is basically recouping the cost to operate the ferry off the public, which are Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. I mean, yes, tourism, I get it. Tourists can pay if they want to come to Newfoundland and they have the money, they want to spend the dollars, but don't make it prohibitive. The children, even, like I said, having children travel for free is at least something. But that discount, you're right, it should be more than what is offered at Via Rail, because that was what was promised. And again, we are being snubbed, and it just feels like that double standard. And, I think people wonder why Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, have this unique culture. I think it's because we become insular because we just don't feel like we're included in these Canada-wide initiatives. We're part of Canada.
Fair ball. Appreciate the time, Pam. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, another one before we get to the break. Let's go to line 4. Jerry, you're on the air.
Yes, Pa. How you doing?
Not too bad, I suppose. You?
You're the man that's going to help me out today.
Uh-oh. Let's see what I can do.
Well, I figure everybody else calling didn't get problem solved, so I figured I'd give you a chance. Can you hear me? I'm outdoors and it's a little bit windy.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the wind is the issue that I'm calling about, Paddy.
Okay.
So golf season started up, and I'm looking to get it started on the right foot. And I tell you, the Newfie wind is something fierce, right?
Yep.
And, on a nice day, getting up with a nice, calm, smooth swing, down the middle, little fade. I gets over there yesterday, and every day, lately, it's just a wind into the teeth. And by the time she's finished slicing, it's almost back to my feet. And I'm just thinking, I heard you chatting the other day about hitting wedges in golf. There's got to be somebody here in the province that's used to playing in this wind that can call in or write in. They're on until 12, so we got about an hour and a half here. Like to get the weekend off on the right foot, and the wind is not going to slack off by the looks of it. So if you got anything for me, man, to get me down, and I'm talking about that wind into the teeth, what do I got to do?
Okay. Well, I used to be pretty good. I'm not very good anymore. I'm a terrible player in the wind because I hit the ball really high, number one. So it's about the club you choose. But here's the best advice anyone ever gave me about playing in the wind. And it's sort of counterintuitive, but it's absolutely the right way to approach it. When you're swinging downwind, you can swing hard. When you're swinging into the wind, you have to swing easy, because even high ball hitters, the easier your swing, the lower the trajectory, which helps with playing in the wind. So that's my one tidbit of advice there. Swinging easy into the wind, because you see it all the time. Amateurs get on the tee, they're driving the ball into the wind as fierce as it can get sometimes, and they swing like they're jumping out of their shoes. And it's the exact wrong way to approach the wind. Swing easy into the wind, swing hard downwind.
Dude, listen, man. You might just save my summer, brother. All right, man. Thanks a million.
No problem, Jerry. Go get him.
All right, have a good one.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. Oh, my, that's pretty good. Yeah, and I do hit it pretty high, so the wind is not my friend on the golf course. Anyway, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to Brenda Halley. She's planning on running for Ward 2 councillor in the city of St. John's in the upcoming municipal election. Good morning, Brenda. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem at all.
Patty, I was phoning about today public safety and, sort of sharing the space in St. John's as a whole, but in particular Ward 2, of course. I wanted to talk about the open drug use that we're seeing down around Bannerman Park, Bishop Field School, and the green space, which is also called Father Walter's Hill, which I didn't know the name of that until the other day. It's opposite the gathering place, just when you do the crosswalk there, it's a little green area. I'm going around the ward and people are phoning me. I haven't been elected yet, I'll throw that out. But people are phoning me to say, we feel really afraid for our children. Kids are seeing needles, cracked pipes, and things like this. So I just, it's a concern for both parents and business owners as well in the ward. We met with, Patty, various levels of government just earlier this week, actually, before school got out. There was a complaint gone into Minister Abbott, and he was very responsive, and he had a meeting just the other day. So there was Minister Abbott, Mayor Breen, Deputy Mayor Sheila O'Leary, the RNC was there, the school, we had it at Bishop Field School. Several parents were there, and they were really, really afraid and, worried about their children stepping on a needle or, picking one up. And we're just sort of had a meeting about coming up with ideas, what we could do, And I just wanted to bring this up today, Patty, because we were talking about earlier calls, mental health issues and, all the like. And, of course, in my vocation is a social worker for mental health and addictions. And I just wanted to, voice that we need to, we're concerned. I want to validate people's concerns, but we need to look at this through a health lens. This is it's public safety, but it's a health lens. It's a mental health sort of crisis is what people are saying. The people I see on the streets, and many times, because I live in this ward as well, they're out in these fields and there's usage happening in the daytime and other activities. I'll just leave it at that. But I wonder if there's meaningful engagement, Patty. Addiction is a funny thing. There's detoxing is one piece of it, but everyone needs a home, a food, and a structure to their day, and a sense of belonging. And I referenced this the last time I called in. The opposite of addiction is connection, and this is the place where we have to start. But I just wanted to throw this out this morning, and let people know that I'm working on this as a parent. I came to Bishop Field School as a parent of a kid who attends that school just on Monday with this bigger meeting. And it was a really good place to start. I think we've mobilized and come up with a good crew to meet again. But I think we needed other people at the table, other stakeholders like SWAP, Safe Works Access Program, maybe someone with lived experience, and folks from the Gathering Place and Stella Circle. So, hopefully we'll be able to get that on the go. And I'm told by Minister Abbott he's hoping for a meeting as early as next week.
Brenda, it's the same question. I understand these issues and we have to identify them, but I'm always sort of grasping for a better understanding of what municipal politicians think their role will be, whether it be in clean needles and or the plastic receptacles for them and or policing and or specific pockets of the city where you see maybe more rampant drug use and maybe other parts. So what do you think the municipality's role is?
Well, we all have, happy people, happy cities, right? So I was really delighted that Mayor Breen and Deputy Mayor Sheila O'Leary and other representatives, by the way, of the city for their wellness programs attended that meeting, because we all have a role to play. We all have a role to play in this. So they were on because, they want to, the city-owned, Bannerman Park is under the jurisdiction of the city. So I understand that security were hired. I know that Bishopfield had their last day of school, sort of speeches and so on at the park, so that we wanted to make sure there was safety there with security folk. There's a place for police here for sure, but Patty, there's a bunch of things, right? Like we don't have a safe injection site in this city. Right, is one of the things. SWAP, I know that SWAP has a needle program down at Kitty Bitty Lake, and that's fine. But maybe there needs to be more of them around. Like in the downtown sector specifically, because that's where we're seeing the bulk of the usage. We have the Gathering Place there. We have Stella Circle. And folks, I think what happened is, the folks that we're talking about, they lived in boarding houses for years downtown. And as downtown became gentrified and the price and cost of living increased and it became astronomical, people were really driven out of their neighborhoods, right? And so they might have been here long before some of us who have the concern now. And so now they're living in various areas. But what I wanted to speak about, and when I see people, and as I walk around in my own ward, in these green spaces and using, what are they doing in the run of the day? Like, what structure is set up for them in the day? Patty, I've been lucky enough. There's various ways, paths of recovery, and that's what I've been doing with my work for many years. But I've been lucky enough to start a therapeutic horticulture program in the downtown area in my work. And that was started for people who wanted to learn about wellness and experience wellness. And it's been really successful. We've had it going on over 10 years. And it's soon going to find a new home under the Bridges to Hope program, under the food bank. And we're going to partner there. And so it's going to, increase in numbers and accessibility and everything. But the folks at that program experience really good recovery. Not to say that there's not relapse and slips that happen, because that's part of addiction. It's a chronic brain relapse disease. So we have to treat it through the lens of health. And I know that Minister Abbott is going to try and get another meeting on the go. But like the stakeholders that I just mentioned, they really need to be at the table. So I think that he's probably has intention to reach out to those folks. We need to get everybody together, mobilized, to see what, how we can help. And how we can create structure to people's days, like meaningful activity,
Yeah, because even in some of the shelters, emergency and otherwise, it's get up and get out. And idle hands, you know what people say about idle hands. And, even things like receptacles for needles and those types of things. Yep. Look, I know why they're important, but like I've said many times on this show, if you are in the throes of addiction, good decision making is not your forte. They will just drop the needles where they finished injecting themselves. And, some of those needles that I've seen on trailheads are literally steps away from a red plastic needle receptacle. So there's a lot to this. But, the concept of It takes all hands representing all these different organizations, different levels of government to be involved in this. There's no question about it. And I don't know how bad, well, I'll say, use that word, how bad it is in other parts of the province, but certainly in and around town, there's a reason why we see so much of this and so many people that move in and around the metro area for access to services, access to the supports. And we know even the type of drugs on the street now are turning people into zombies. You know, it's not your grandfather's drug du jour anymore. It's a different world out there. It's a little bit more complicated too. And the population is growing and the supports have not grown with it. So there's a lot of work to be done. Brenda, I'll give you the final thoughts before I have to get going.
Thanks, Patty. Some great comments. I wanted to say one more time that, the meeting the other day was very positive because we've now mobilized. And sometimes when we're really, fear helps that mobilization, right? So I think that getting all the folks to the table and finding creative ways. But what I'll leave you with this, Patty, and I've experienced it in my own work life for over 20 years, is the opposite of addiction is connection. When we create a community and a structure for people in their day, that will help. I promise. That's one of the ways that helps.
I appreciate your time, Brenda. Good luck out there.
Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Brenda Halley, who's going to be running in Ward 2 of the upcoming municipal elections in St. John's. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Labrador Air Access Program. We all know the cost-prohibitive nature of traveling in and out of Labrador. Then add to it the servicing of the North Coast. There was a devastating story in the news earlier this week about someone who perished while waiting for service in Nain. Leila Evans is right after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the PC member for Torngat Mountains. That's Leila Evans. And good morning, Leila. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Patty.
Welcome to the program. Where would you like to start?
Where should I start? Now, Patty, I'm calling in not to complain about the services for Labrador, and especially for my district, but I'm in to talk again about some facts, and it's really important because the new premier was up in Labrador for Labrador Expo, and he announced his Labrador Air Access Program with very little details. And when it's going to be put in place, it's to provide a discount on the base airfares for Labrador and residents of the Northern Peninsula. Now, Patty, to be quite honest, we all know there's an election looming. I think the deadline is October this year. So, I just don't want Labradorians to sort of fall for this again because, in May, his government announced a $15 million subsidy for the interprovincial travel loop between Deer Lake, St. John's, and Gander. Nothing for Labrador, nothing even for tourists, because the Minister of Tourism came back in defense and he said, it's for tourists. When tourists get to the island, we got to make sure they can travel within the island. And I support that. I want tourists to be able to travel. I want businesses on the island to be able to take advantage of the tourism season. I fully support that. But the point that I was making over and over again, and I said this when I wrote letters to the Minister of Transportation, the Minister of Tourism, is like even our Labrador tourists are discriminated against, right? So for me, it's something that we need to talk about. Like, where's the details for this subsidy, and would he have actually provided it for us if an election wasn't pending?
I have no idea. I can't answer that question. But what exactly would a program look like insofar as subsidies go? I don't even know where you start here, because there's been a bunch of issues. Even if we look at things that were supposed to protect the consumer in Labrador, that has never worked. Nutrition North, the air access program, or the air travel subsidy, none of things have made lives easier or more accessible for people in Labrador. So how do you suggest this program could work if it was going to be actually beneficial, as opposed to just money flying around and no real benefits achieved?
Well, Patty, I think at the root of the problem, this government is the Liberals, even though they kept the revolving door of premiers. Basically, we're on our third premier. It's the same Liberal Party, and the ministers keep the revolving door of ministers, so there's no accountability. I think the biggest problem with this, Paddy, is they're reactive. So they throw things at us, like the daycare system. You know what I mean? Like, it was just announced for a political ploy. Then when they started to try to put the details in, we saw it was lacking. You know, we look at healthcare now, this big introduction of the health accord and all this cherry picking, and now we see it's come out, the travel nurses that they relied on, it costs $400,000 a year per nurse. So for us, we don't want Labrador to suffer this reactive. We wanted to have something that's planned out, that looks at the problems, and not for it to be a subsidy. Right? For us, is we want something that's going to work for Labradorians. We want health care. We want to be able to access health care for Labradorians, just the same as on the island. We want to be able to travel where it's cost-effective to travel. And then we look at our marine service, Paddy. I mean, up in Labrador, that boat held up, and she's supposed to be able to travel in ice, but they wouldn't sail her. And why it ended up happening, Paddy, it was very, very stressful for people because the stores were bare. We were running out of food. The stores up in Nain and was running out of toilet paper. So how do we get to the crisis? Is basically they don't do anything for Labradorians until they get caught with a pending election and several seats in play, and now they're trying to throw money at it without any details again. And for me, I think I just want Labradorians to take a note of what's happened. And Paddy, the biggest problem for me is letters to the Minister of Transportation, Minister of Tourism. I never hear anything back from the Minister of Transportation.
Yeah, Leila, the connection is totally gone. Are you still there? Leila? I should put her on hold, Dave, if she wants to finish her thoughts, because obviously that is totally gone. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Jeff. You're on the air. Hi, Jeff. You're on the air. Jeff on line number 2, going once, going twice, on hold. Let's go quick one before the news. Line 5, Barry, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you for taking my call.
No problem.
Patty, I'm no longer with the Life Saving Society, but I can't help myself. I've got to share some safety tips. Tomorrow beginning the opening day of the food fishery. Excuse me. As a boat owner, you should already have pre-maintenance check in your engine, make sure everything's working properly. Insist that your crew are wearing a life jacket, and set a good example by wearing one yourself. Check the weather and continually monitor it while you're out there. If you see a difference or a change, head back to port. Don't wait too late. Common reason for breakdowns, Patty, is running out of gas. So you use the 3/3 rule. 1/3 for a trip out, 1/3 for a trip back, and 1/3 in reserve. If you're going out on sea-doos, which are very popular these days, should only be one rodder per machine. Wear a wet or dry suit and travel with at least 2 machines, and always wear a life jacket, of course. Patty, with the sharks being so prevalent these days, you should always use a hand gaff to take your fish aboard instead of putting your hand over the side just in case. Some new tips this year, Patty. If you're fishing from a beach, you should be careful to have a look behind before you cast your line out, because there's lots of people behind you that could cause an accident. And if you're processing your fish on the beach, throw the fish tractors out in the water. Patty, a lot of people these days are starting to fish from the rocks, and you want to be careful out there. You want to make sure that you're wearing a life jacket. Travel with somebody else and watch the rocks for slipperiness, especially on low tide, Patty. Let's wish everybody a safe and successful season during food fishery. And Patty, I also know that Minister Thompson is in Torbay this morning making an announcement for safe harbours, and I hope that she's aware of the rough sea conditions, because tomorrow it's going to be a write-off for a lot of people, especially in smaller boats. And don't take chances, folks. Be safe, be seen, and make every trip a safe round trip.
Absolutely. People just sometimes take for granted some of the risks that they might be entering into because, well, I'm a seasoned boat or nothing can go wrong. When you think like that is exactly when things can go wrong. So those are good tips, Barry, and hopefully they lead people to make some good decisions as they head out on the water, because nothing better than being out in boat, right, whether you're fishing or otherwise. So anything else quick, because I'm up against 11 o'clock, Barry?
Yeah, thank you, Patty. Absolutely, Patty. there's nothing like a lot of us take great enjoyment in food fishery and smell the salt sea, boy, smell the salt sea, taste the salt water off your lips. It's a great experience, and it's too bad that we have to be limited the way we are, but that's it. We're very hopeful that at the end of the summer we have that consultation talk, and I hope to be invited to that table. So, Minister Thompson, if you're listening, please. You should have made the right decision in the first place by extending the season like we're asking, but please make sure that we're going to have that conversation come fall.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
As always, it's been a pleasure, Patty.
My pleasure, Barry. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, lots of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's rejoin Leila Evans on tour to get her final thoughts. Leila, you're back on the air.
Yeah, sorry, Patty. I'm up in my district, so I think we were having trouble with the phone lines there. But you did say, there's a problem with the programs. But, Patty, the point I'm making is, with this government, is they don't put a lot of thought and planning into an issue or area that needs support. And what ends up happening is we see these reactive programs that's thrown together without proper planning, consultation. Like we look at healthcare. Same thing with healthcare is suffering. Affordable daycare. Right? Even pay equity, Patty, when the Minister of Women and Gender Equality was caught, the briefing notes were tipped, and it said that it showed that they didn't support pay equity, and then they had to throw something together. So for us, is we're dealing with a government that's been in power for 10 years. They don't do any real work, until it becomes a crisis, and then what happens is there's the need to look good. So they basically throw something together that looks and sounds good on the surface, and then when it finally starts to roll out, there's problems with it. But I just want to draw the attention back to Labrador and the intra-provincial travel loop to a cost of $15 million for the island. And we up in Labrador, struggling with affordable travel, affordable patient travel. And the minister came back and said, well, it's a short tourism season. And then when we looked at the overall cost of the program, Patty, it worked out for this intra-provincial island loop was about $1 million a week. And so now, with the looming election coming up in October, what does the Premier do? The new Premier, the revolving door of Premiers, we're on our third Premier, comes up and says, we're going to announce this Travel for Labrador, you know what I mean? Labrador Air Access Program. But there's no details on it. Right, and so for me is I think the government really needs to be held to account. You can't just go making these big announcements when you got a looming election, throwing things together that really doesn't address the needs of the region, the needs of the people. And Patty, that's just not for Labrador; it's for all of the island. So I mean, for us, like I said, we want plans, we want consultation with the people, because out there in every region that needs a service that's being failed right now, the people who are being failed by the system, the people who are in the programs that are failing, they're the ones that knows what the problems are. But you see over and over again, and I see it in the House as a MHA. I see legislation being introduced, Patty, and then you say, okay, who did you consult with? We're going to consult after the legislation is put into place. And it's the same thing with these programs. So for us, and I mean, just look at the newest announcement that came out, not announcement, but what was in the news. $400,000 per year, a cost of one travel nurse.
Yes, I know. We've talked about that extensively. I will try to get details on the Labrador Air Access Program, because when I heard it announced, it was just like, okay, now what?
Yep.
And there was nothing.
That's another thing being thrown at the wall. It's like when you're in university and you're boiling your pasta. The thing is, the trick is, see if it's done, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. Well, that's how the Liberals have been doing their government, Patty. And for us, it has to stop. And Labradorians are the ones that's really suffering right now with the way we're being treated, and we just got to look at the Marine Service, being told, it's ice. When all the when we look at the satellite footage, Patty, we see it's not ice. So why are we getting the service? Why do we have to barter toilet paper for catsup up in our northern Labrador communities? It's a real failure, Patty, and I don't want people to be fooled by this. I really don't. I think they need to take a hard look at the last 10 years what we've been dealing with.
Understood your point, Leila, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Leila Evans, the PC member for Torringay Mountains. Well, Memorial University has launched Canada's first University House Student-Managed Social Impact Fund. The manager at the Centre for Social Enterprise at Memorial University is Dr. Gillian Morrissey and joins us on line number 1. Good morning, Dr. Morrissey. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Excellent today. How about you?
I'm good, thanks. I was so excited to come on and say I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
And I love that. And welcome to the show. Thanks for making time.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here with you.
So to start at the very beginning here, when people hear social enterprise or a social impact fund, I'm going to hazard a guess that a lot of people listening to the program this morning do not even know what that means. What does it mean?
Well, to start with social enterprise, from the name of our centre, social enterprise is a sort of a way of organizing in business that puts the mission or the purpose of the organization at the forefront, and profit comes after that. So we see that kind of in many forms. A social enterprise in Newfoundland and Labrador could be a technically, legally registered as a for-profit company, a not-for-profit, or a charity, which are the most common here in this province, but also a cooperative. In other provinces like BC and Nova Scotia, there are legal forms for hybrid organizing like this, but the most important piece is that it's mission or purpose-driven. So we're typically trying to create some kind of positive change in society, and we always use the phrase, the 3 Ps. So we're doing people, planet, and profit.
So, Dr. Morrissey, how or why is it important to have this housed in the university setting?
Well, that's an interesting question. So, Fairlead Social Impact Fund is part of another program we run here now called the Impact Investing Fellowship, and that's in partnership with Propel Impact, which is a national nonprofit that does this across the country. So our Impact Investing Fellowship, it's a student team. There's about 15 of them now on the team, and they work together to basically assess local organizations that are interested in having impact investment. And I'll speak to what that is in a second. So the students work through a due diligence process. They look at impact measurement and investment portfolio development. And ultimately, their goal is to identify and make recommendations around which organizations in the province are ready for investment. And then Fairlead, the impact fund, which is housed in the university, will make an investment up to $75,000 in that organization. So the reason why it's unique and exciting that Fairlead is actually housed in the university is because no other university in Canada has done this. Propel Impact does have fellowships at other universities, so programs in other universities for students, but the money that they are investing is through other entities, so funds held by other entities. The closest case is out in Calgary. Their fund, again, is separate from the university, but the students have access to a portion of that money. So here at Fairlead, at the Centre for Social Enterprise, our fund is actually in the university. And when our student fellowship team makes a recommendation and the investment committee that they report to agrees with them, it is actually Memorial putting that investment out into community. And Patty, I really see this. I've been talking a lot about this with our collaborators and our friends, we'll say, of the centre. You know, Memorial has a special obligation to build a better future for the province, the country, and the world. And to kind of pick up on what Ms. Evans was just saying, Fairlead and the Impact Investing Fellowship, this is a proactive solution to challenges faced in our province. So we're getting necessary capital, catalytic capital, into the hands of organizations in our community that are really creating positive change. So it's a very exciting initiative. The fact that it's Memorial doing this and not another fund that our team provides the due diligence and the recommendation to is very exciting. And I believe it really speaks to Memorial's special obligation and our desire and commitment to being creative and innovative to ensure a better future for our province and the students and young people who are the next generation of leaders. And you've identified your first recipient. Who is it and why is it a good fit? Yeah, so we were very excited yesterday to do our first check presentation at the fund launch. And so we wrote a $75,000 investment to Home Again Furniture Bank, which is an incredible organization. Home Again is a social enterprise that provides essential furniture to individuals and families across the province while creating environmental and employment benefits through the resale store Again and Again Thrift and Decor. furniture thrift and decor, I should say. So that store is located up on White Rose Drive, and it's a really cool furniture and decor thrift shop, and they have been able to use that venture and their Home Again Furniture Bank to make sure that more than, I think Amy said yesterday, 4,600 or 4,700 homes have furniture, and they're supported by more than 700 volunteers. And their investment from Fair Lead Social Impact Fund is going to help scale their operations. I think Amy mentioned we're specifically working on their new upholstery business. So that's, again, employment through that program, and through this furniture upcycling and the resale and the donations to furnishing homes, we are keeping a lot of tonnage of garbage furniture out of the landfill. So they have really impressive social and environmental impact, and that's only going to grow more with this investment from Fair Lead.
Congratulations to them. Good company doing good work. This might be a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So we talk about collaboration and partnerships. There's lessons to be learned in other organizations at Memorial University. Is there a dovetail or some collaboration between, say, for instance, your group and, say, the Genesis Centre or the Centre for Innovation in Teaching and Learning? Because they have done a lot of this as incubators in the past as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Memorial entrepreneurship ecosystem is very collaborative and well integrated. So there's, I guess you could say, 5 centers, although we don't all use that name. But we have the Center for Social Enterprise, the Memorial Center for Entrepreneurship, which is traditional entrepreneurship. You have the Genesis, well, they're not Genesis Center anymore, but Genesis up on Signal Hill campus, and they do technology entrepreneurship. We have the Research Innovation Office as well, and they do technology transfer and commercialization of research into entrepreneurship. And then the 5th one is the Entrepreneurship Training Program, which is out of the School of Graduate Studies. We are all very well connected to each other. We work incredibly well together, but that's not the only collaboration we're known for. And the Center for Social Enterprise has numerous partners, and I would shout out to Propel Impact, which is our impact investing partner, but also the Community Sector Council of Newfoundland and Labrador. In fact, those 2 groups are actually out in another room here doing a workshop on getting board buy-in for impact investment. So we've got those. We also work closely with Community Foundation Newfoundland and Labrador, the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Cooperatives, and many others. So there's a kind of a group of capacity builders, and then we are all working to support this, what we call the community sector or the social purpose sector.
I really appreciate it.
Happening in and outside of your...
No question. So anything else that we might be missing that you'd like to speak to this morning, Dr. Morrissey?
Well, just to, I guess, highlight that, this is a student-led team, so we're really proud and excited to be supporting the development of student leadership in this space. Social finance and impact investing is a growing field, and we're at the forefront of it here. And, the fund is very new, very exciting. We will be starting now in the fall to look at other organizations we can invest in, so I encourage if you're running or involved with a social enterprise or a community organization and you're interested, feel free to reach out. socialenterprise@mun.ca is our email. We will be doing some workshops and training events again when the academic year starts in September. Our team is looking to talk to community groups who are interested in impact investment. And so I guess, Patty, one final thing, Fair Lead is where finance meets purpose and where learning becomes leadership. And we are just so very excited at the Centre and at Memorial to be part of that or leading that change here in the province. And we really look forward to collaborating with the sector and to scale impact all over Newfoundland and Labrador.
Really appreciate your time and letting us know about this particular program. And just on a personal note, you talk about working with Genesis. The president and CEO at Genesis, Ed Martin, is my brother-in-law.
Oh, very cool.
Thought I'd give him a plug.
We love working with Ed.
Terrific. Nice to meet you this morning, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Have a great day.
The same to you. Bye-bye. Dr. Gillian Morrissey, the manager of the Centre for Social Enterprise at Memorial University. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to the Executive Director at Thrive. That's Angela Crockwell. Good morning, Angela. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Great today. How about you?
I'm doing well.
I mentioned you and the issue of additional security at the public parks off the top of the show this morning. You know, the outcry of public safety based on the recent surveys is very real. Whether or not it's exaggerated in some people's minds or not is a conversation for another day. But you're in the news worried about how it might impact the most vulnerable people in society, people who are already marginalized. Specifically, what are you worried about?
Yeah, so my point is always that we really don't want to conflate issues such as homelessness and poverty and mental health with making people or our society unsafe. I mean, the data is very clear that there has been an increase in crime. I think, Joe Public's concerns about public safety is very valid, and, I want to acknowledge that, obviously. But I'm also, sometimes when people see folks who might be sleeping outside or might be panhandling because they're experiencing poverty, that doesn't necessarily make society or people unsafe. What they're witnessing is often issues of poverty, issues of homelessness, issues of mental illness. So I'm always concerned and really want to challenge all of us as a society to frame those issues for what they are and not as criminal or making people unsafe.
Yeah, a criminal is someone who committed a crime, not someone who's simply homeless. Let's dig into this a little further, Angela, because, being a security guard can be very difficult work, but not every area a security guard is present is the same. It's one thing to be a security guard at the liquor store or the grocery store or at the mall or what have you, and I'm not dismissing their important work, but for this type of work in the parks, you talk about training required to identify how to handle different issues and the nuances involved. What does that look like? Because that's maybe a little bit easier said than done when we're talking about private security. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's important, obviously, for people to have training, to be able to respond appropriately, for people who may be experiencing a mental health crisis, to make sure that those interactions are helpful and respectful and not othering people. But I also think in terms of the investments, if we really want to shift the needle on addressing issues of public safety, crime, marginalization, it takes investments in supports and services. So while the city will be investing in security for our parks and public spaces, that doesn't provide long-term solutions to be able to shift the needle on those issues. And so I think that's part of the strategy. And I will acknowledge the City of St. John's funded Thrive to be able to have permanent 5-day outreach workers on the streets, and it's those kinds of investments that are able to really help people, get them connected to services, help find them housing, help connect them to detox services. All of those things will make the long-term lasting impact. And so I think, we need to be thinking about those bigger investments and that can create real change, not only for people who are really struggling, and there are way too many people right now who are really struggling, but also for public feeling of safety and hopefully, obviously, a reduction in crime that's happening in our province.
Yeah, investment or spending in different areas of support obviously is a big part of this, but I would also suggest that there's a lack of understanding amongst the general public about the issues, root causes that lead to things of people living in poverty, people who are homeless or precariously close to being homeless. I think there's, people get all swathed with one brush, and that it's a one-size-fits-all. It's all the same thing. Everybody in that position is living the same life. It's just not it. So we can spend on supports, but some of that comes with political will. Political will is generally fueled by the electorate's understanding and the electorate pushing governments in one direction or another. I think there's a lot of real broken misunderstanding out there.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I think often when us as citizens are confronted with hearing a rise in crime, a feeling of unsafety when we're visiting public spaces or the downtown core, most people's natural reaction might be we need increased security and police presence. And while that is at times may be part of the issue, obviously, if there's criminal activity happening. But the real shift will be in those long-term supports. So, if we see people sleeping in a park, the answer is not security, say, and move. The answer is, how do we help you find affordable, safe housing? And that will be what will be helpful in the long run, as I said, both to the general public, but also, obviously, to people who are struggling.
Yeah, it's much like the whole tent city conversations, right? People say, well, we need people to be out of the park in this circumstance. But that doesn't really solve or change anything. When we moved the tents from the Confederation Building to Bannerman Park to wherever else, that's all we did. We moved them around. Same thing if someone is ushered out of a park who's sleeping in the park in the middle of the night. That just means they're going to go somewhere else and sleep. So we haven't actually solved anything. We've just shuffled the deck chairs.
Absolutely. And I will often raise the concern of asking people, particularly in public spaces, who have set up a tent or who are sleeping outside, when they are told you have to move, where are they going? If I'm homeless tonight and I literally have nowhere to sleep, most privately owned spaces don't want me there, and if publicly owned spaces don't want me there, I don't have the luxury of becoming invisible or vanishing. I have to sleep somewhere. And so it is those are the investments and solutions that we need to find. And just saying to people, you have to move because we don't want to have to look at people who are homeless, or we don't want to have to look at people who are struggling with poverty. It pushes people to the margins, and often then they're sleeping places that maybe nobody can see them, and it does nothing to solve the issue. So it can actually exacerbate the issue, at least when people are in more visible spaces. Our outreach workers, first of all, they can find them and have those interactions, where if people are in the backwoods somewhere, all it means is less of Joe Public is actually looking at what's happening, but there's no solution being found.
No, exactly. Angela, I appreciate your time as usual. Thank you.
Thanks, Paddy. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Angela Crockwell, the Executive Director at Thrive. Let's take a break from the news. When we come back, Jeff's in the queue to react to Brenda's call. I believe that's Brenda Halley, who's running for the Ward 2 councillor position in the upcoming municipal election. And then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. A bit more Memorial University conversation here. So the Eastern Edge Robotics team won the Underwater Robotics World Championship, just competed in Alpena. I think that's Michigan, is it? Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to the mechanical team lead with Eastern Edge Robotics. That's Mark Johnson. Good morning, Mark. You're on the air.
Hi there. How's it going, Paddy?
Excellent. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I just got back from, yes, you're right, Alpena, Michigan. And we got third place there in the World Championship at Eastern Edge, so we're feeling pretty good, I'd say.
Congratulations. That's quite a performance.
Yeah, it's honestly, I think everyone's super excited. It was a lot of understatement to say it's a lot of hard work that went into it. And I think we're just happy to have that result after so much work put in throughout the year, for sure.
So tell us about the competition. How does it work?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, because I don't think some people may not know how underwater robotics competitions work. We basically spend the year designing a vehicle that's going to submerge us underwater a couple meters. It's kind of like a mini submarine, if you want to call it that way. And basically it's designed to perform kind of simulated tasks that an ROV would normally perform, whether it's analyzing, a shipwreck, moving valves, plugging in cables, and various other tasks that a normal ROV would do, but we kind of simulate it at a competition and compete against other teams worldwide.
So is it based on accuracy of analysis? Is it based on time to complete tasks? How does that scorecard look?
Yeah, so you got 15 minutes when you're in the pool. You got to complete as many tasks as possible. The more tasks you complete, the more points you get. And there are some tasks where the better, the more accurate you are, or you do it a certain way. Maybe you incorporate like an autonomous component, you might get more points. And along with that in the pool, there's also other components to the competition, such as presentation, a technical document, safety, marketing display, that all add up to a total score. So yeah.
It's not lost on me that, I mean, for instance, you guys, congratulations, but when you have 5 teams from the province competing on the international stage, that really speaks volumes.
Yeah, it really does. It's quite amazing. So there are different classes in the competition. We're in the University Explorer class, and so there's one team there, that's us. We had 3 teams actually in the high school World Championship, which was Holy Heart of Mary, Clarenville, and Labrador Straits, who all competed and did great also. And we had one other team from Corner Brook, the Center for Research and Innovation, that competed in the class kind of in between high school and university. So it's quite amazing. It's awesome. It's a great experience going up there with everybody, cheering everybody on, supporting each other. It's quite awesome. It's quite awesome.
Where are you in your school progress?
Me, I'm going to my last year of mechanical engineering. It's been quite the ride. I've been on the team now, actually, Eastern Edge, for 4 years, which is quite quite something to think about. But yeah, I'm going to my last year now.
Congratulations. Let's just dig into what the future holds. Not necessarily for you on a professional front or what have you, but some of the reason that I think we're having some of these successes, both at the high school level and for Western Wave Robotics and for Eastern Edge, is some of the facilities we have and some of the instructors and professors we have. Like, I know the 2026 World Championships are coming to this province for the first time, and we hear from the teams elsewhere that they cannot wait to get here. Why? Because of our facilities. Whether it be the flume tank or the simulators or things that we have at the Marine Institute, which is a real gem that doesn't get enough attention.
I completely agree. It's quite, I think the Marine Institute, and even like I mentioned the Corner Brook Center for Research and Innovation, Western Wave, there are some really undervalued facilities here in the province. Like you mentioned, the Flume Tank Marine Institute is one of the most amazing facilities in the world. There's even at the ice tank over at CNR, or Canadian Research, CNRA. I would have said that wrong, sorry. But there's some really amazing facilities. One even has wave tanks and stuff. And people, I don't know, there's, again, even at Marine Institute, again, like you said, big ship simulators and other different facilities like that, which you can't really find at, one place. It's all in one place. It's quite an amazing spot, especially if you love marine technology. They're quite great spots. And again, that new place, the Corner Brook Research Center for Research and Innovation, all brand new and everything too. So I think it's undervalued in the province. I'm really happy that people are going to come. We're going to have there's probably 80 teams there at the World Championship in Alpena, and we might see similar numbers in St. John, so everyone will get to kind of experience that and appreciate what we have over here, which is really cool. Yeah, the World Championships have been here before, I think 2007 and 2015, and they're coming back next year, so that's great stuff. And I think the wave tank you're referring to, is that the one at NRC, the National Research Council? Yeah, NRC. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. Yeah, NRC is one. And they have an ice tank, too, which is pretty impressive also. Right on. And on a personal note, what's next for you, Mark? What's next for me? Well, I'm, of course, going to my last year of mechanical engineering. I have all that on the go. But thinking about the team and stuff, too, I guess I'm in more of a leadership role in the team. I really want to contribute to hopefully the plan, I guess, is to bring home a world championship next year at home for Eastern Edge. So my part would be trying to lead us next year in whatever way I can to that championship, while also finishing my degree, maybe finding a job. So that's kind of next for me. But yeah, just exciting times. Getting towards the end of, I guess, my engineering journey. In studying at least. Mark, I really appreciate making time for the show. Once more, hearty congratulations to you and the team. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate the time, Patty. Thank you for listening to us. If anybody's ever interested, we do open meetings throughout the year and stuff too. So come on by, check out Eastern Edge is my only recommendation if you have any interest at all. So yeah. Sounds good. Stay in touch, Mark. Good luck. All right. Thanks so much. See you. You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Mark Johnson, mechanical team lead for Eastern Edge Robotics, on the podium at the World Championships, underwater robotics. How about that? Let's take our final break of the morning and the week. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Jeff, you're on the air.
Morning, Patty. How are you doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad. I'm just calling about the lady that phoned about the needles they're finding down around Bishop Field and the gathering place and stuff.
Yep.
He was saying that, like, the addicts, they have too much idle time in the days. Yeah, I totally agree. And she said there was a group of people, the council were going to be getting together and trying to come up with some solutions.
Yeah, that's pretty much what she had to say. And your thoughts on that?
Why not have an addict there at that meeting, a couple addicts at that meeting, to ask them, how would somebody know that's not an addict, but it's going to help? Why can't they send somebody down to the opioid clinic just to ask some questions down there? Go to an NA meeting, ask some addicts there what would help. Like some people that don't know the situation, only what they see, but they're not the actual addict, they can't help. As far as I'm concerned, only what they're reading from a book, what an addict goes through, right?
Jeff, in fairness, I think Brenda was clear in saying, as part of this committee needs to be people with lived experience. So I guess that means folks who are either current addicts or recovering addicts or whatever the case may be. So she did indeed include those people.
Oh, okay.
That group of people.
I never caught that part of it. If that's the part of it, that is fantastic. But, if you're not going to ask the correct people what will help them, it's not going to work,
Yeah, because we need to know what works. And that's not just statistical analysis. It's not just reading data. It actually has to come from people who have sought the help, got the help, and got better as a result, or at least are in recovery.
Bingo. I agree with you totally. But that's all I had to say, Paddy. And it is a problem. It's getting worse and worse every day. Like, I'm a recovering addict myself. I got a couple of years clean, but it's a battle every day. It's just like cancer, any other disease. Like, I didn't ask for this. I was born an addict, and a lot of people don't understand that. People just think it's a choice. Absolutely, it's not a choice.
There's a bunch of reasons how people find themselves addicted to one thing or another. So what helped you, Jeff?
I wanted. I was ready. I was ready to change my life. I had enough of loss and hurt and pain.
And so what worked for you insofar as kicking the habit, as they say, to get clean, to get sober?
Well, actually, I went to a clinic, actually, and helped. There's doctors out there that will help you, you know what I mean? And counselors and reaching out to other people. But if you don't want to, you're not, just like smoking. If you don't want to quit smoking, you're not going to. If you don't want to do something, you're not going to. The biggest thing, you got to want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it. That's the bottom line.
That makes sense to me. And so one more, this is a personal question. Feel free not to answer it. So you go into the clinic, you enter into recovery. Did you rebound back to your old habits more than once before you got clean?
Oh, several times.
Yeah?
Several times, but I was never ready. Do you know what I mean? I did it for the wrong reasons before. Like, I did it to please other people. But when I was ready to please myself and know that I had no other choice, and I really wanted to know what a sober life was like, I did it. You know what I mean? I got 2.5 years clean, and it was the best 2.5 years of my life.
It'll sound like a silly question, but I don't think it is. Other than being free of the addiction, how has it changed your life?
I'm not free of the addiction. I got the addiction every day.
Okay,
like, people don't
that's
understand
fair.
that.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what
You're
I mean?
right.
I do still have cravings. You will never be free of it, because addiction is one of the worst diseases out there. You know what I mean? Because like, people see somebody that have cancer, that poor soul is got cancer and he don't have that much time left. But if somebody sees somebody on the side of the road that's an addict or he's an alcoholic or whatever, which is an addiction, they say, oh, that son of a gun is his own fault. He don't have to bend his elbow. He don't have to do this, or he don't have to go and get the drugs. But yes, he do. He feel that he really does have to do it, and they got a one-track mind. That's it. They're going to go for their alcohol, or they're going to go for their drug of choice, and they're going to do what they got to do to get it.
Yeah, it's physiological. And once it latches on, it's really difficult, obviously, to deal with it. Jeff, appreciate you making time. I hope you're doing okay, buddy.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
You
Take
too,
care.
man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There we go. It's a good story there. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to Miles Russell, running in Ward 1 here in the city of St. John's in the Falls municipal election. And good morning, Miles. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Man, I don't know if you guys saw the lightning. I saw it strike. Very interesting every time it happens, but that's not what I'm calling it.
Well, I didn't, but I'm sitting here in the studio, and it went from relatively clear skies to pitch black. Then I could hear the thunder, and then I could hear the hail pattering down on the roof of this building. It was crazy. And now all of a sudden it looks like it's relatively clear again.
Yeah, that's these supercells. That's rare for us to have, but are going to happen more frequently.
Yeah.
So, Patty, what I'm calling about today, I just wanted to talk about very, very briefly. I know with the time left in the day or in the morning, talking about affordability, general affordability, and how the city can impact that. So, I just had a quick question for you. Do you know the percentage of income that, what's the biggest expense people have in general?
Shelter.
Exactly. And do you know the next one after that?
Food.
It's between transportation and food, depending on what source you look at. But generally, those are the three big pies.
Yeah.
So that generally occupies about over a half, sometimes up to 2/3 of someone's income. And, what we see now in the city is the largest pie, which is housing, is the thing that's exploding in cost as an expense for people relative to our incomes. So these are things that, when we look at municipal politics versus provincial and federal, a lot of people don't realize how much of a role municipal politics plays in our cost of living. And we're simply in a fact that St. John's isn't building. We're not building. There's no cranes. We have no major construction projects. We're only doing a little bit of suburban development relative to the number of people moving to St. John's. And that's kind of something I think is critical for people to really ponder.
So let's get into it. Inside the world of shelter, the municipalities, generally speaking, would avail of other supports from different levels of government to hit affordability targets regarding shelter, or am I missing something?
Yes and no. There are targets, but if the targets don't have a concrete goal with the city, if the city doesn't say explicitly, we need to build 4,000 homes, we need to build X number of non-market housing, X number of high density. If we don't have these goals and the plan, the city plan and the municipal plan doesn't reflect that, it simply won't happen. The number of projects I've been working on in the last few years that have been canceled, even before it goes to council, is staggering. We're talking hundreds of units do not get built because of a regulation that prevents them from getting funding. They lose CMHC funding. Maybe they lose a good rate with a bank. And these things really impact our housing. And, we're looking at lots keep getting bigger. And, if you were to look at something like in any other market, if something were to happen to increase if a store all of a sudden had 10 times the customers, they would go, oh man, we need more staff, we need a bigger building. And the city has this. They were like, oh my, we need so many more houses. But nothing's really accelerated. Again, we're basically the only city in Canada, the major one, that doesn't have any major construction projects. And it's really stark when you go to Halifax and go, wow, there's 70 cranes all over Halifax, Dartmouth Crossing, building things. And that's our peer city, and we're doing essentially nothing. We're going to start seeing a couple buildings now, but on top of that, just filling in housing in general. And, that's only one part of that pie. The next part being transportation. The city of St. John's is, they declared a climate emergency. Part of that in the general terms of municipal planning is working on public transit and active transit. Metrobus hasn't really expanded in 20 years in the number of actual rollings, the number of buses. They've had a few little changes. We're slowly rolling out a cycling plan across the city. But these are things that those two items can be half of a family's income, just those two items. And the city isn't really, I don't think, doing enough effort to help reduce that burden on people's affordability. The core bills people have, housing and transportation. And to me, that's I think, a huge missing point that a lot of people don't realize how big of a role municipal planning and municipal governance has on your cost of living and affordability.
Yeah, I'll just add, this is not necessarily what we're talking about, but even when we talk about 30% of your income to be spent on housing, whether that be rent or your mortgage payment or what have you, if you're a mortgage holder, that doesn't even reflect the actual true cost of owning a home. So we use that 30%. That's a purchase number. That's not a day-to-day operational number either. So anyway, and I know municipalities don't have anything to do with how much it costs for me to maintain my property, but we never factor that into actual costs. And there is a cost. Ask anyone who owns their own home. Miles, we've run right up against the end of the program. I appreciate your time as usual.
Thanks so much. Chat next week.
Sounds
Have
good.
a good weekend,
Bye-bye.
Patty.
You too. It's Miles Russell, running Award 1. All right, good show today. Good shows all week. Big thanks to everyone supporting the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.